Hello and welcome to Shaman Sister Sessions, episode 55. I'm Michelle Hawk. I'm here with my shaman sister, Catherine Bird, and today we are inviting special guest Monique Darling on our show today. Monique, it is such a pleasure to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm doing so well. I love Valentine's Day in general. It's so nice to be here with two of my sisters, getting to celebrate one of my favorite topics in the whole world.
Absolutely. Valentine's Day. This is a very special episode that you're joining us for. It's such a pleasure to have you here. Shaman Sister Sessions began from Catherine's and my conversations about our work in the world, our sisterhood, our friendship, and what it means to be a practitioner. What does it mean to be a shaman? What does it mean to have these questions, to have these personal experiences? And eventually we decided to make those conversations public. So this is how this podcast was born. And today, Monique, I'm so glad, I know that you're a proponent of all things Valentine's Day, and, we definitely had you in mind for this particular episode. Monique is author of Beyond Cuddle Party. She's a workshop facilitator extraordinaire. Kat and I met her about a year and a half ago, and we'll be sharing a little bit about that story, but we met her at a puja. And today, Monique is joining us to speak about puja and the art of devotion. She has facilitated over 1,500 workshops in the past 8 years. So she is an expert in the field. She's got her, thousands of hours of practice in. She knows what she's talking about. And she's the founder of Juicy Enlightenment, which is an organization dedicated to empowering people who are questioning the assumptions of how their life should be and offering tools for self-expression and trust. She helps bring people into their highest expression of self-love, the highest expression of their capacity for intimacy, the capacity for devotion. And it is such a joy and a true pleasure to have her on the show today. Monique, thank you so much for joining us.
Mm-hmm. It's my total pleasure and honor to be here.
So happy Valentine's Day. Kat, how are you doing?
I'm amazing. Happy Valentine's Day. So good. Things are going so well. Michelle and I are just coming off of a super incredible and intense Open Your Channel retreat weekend Michelle came down to Southern California to help to facilitate on. So we've gotten to be in the same place at the same time. So that's been really fun. And now we're kind of just gearing up for next weekend. We're going to be doing some private sessions together next weekend and hanging out here in Southern California.
Yeah.
And Monique, you're in Washington?
Yes, we just flew out to DC for a whole week of events. So we love it here. Like, you'd be so surprised. But it's a Tantra Mecca center. And so we have so many of our friends that are coming in, and just that they're so hungry to really, like, for me, Tantra is the path of falling in love with yourself. So the more people come show up, the more they get to find all the divine expressions of them. And DC is a huge space for that.
Yeah. And I have to say that Monique probably is one of, like, what do they say, like, the hardest working woman in show business. She's the hardest working woman in Tantra because she's just, like, constantly events and traveling, so much traveling and so much facilitation and just event after event after event. It's truly amazing and inspiring. It's like awe-inspiring for me, for sure. How much you're offering and giving and contributing to this world and this movement that you've created. And truly, people talk about creating movements, but I think you are a shining light in what it means to create a movement for real. And not just on Instagram, but, like, real life.
Thank you, sweetheart.
So go ahead.
I feel like that this was really the reason that I was born. Like, I grew up feeling like everything about me was wrong because I had a repressed religious background, and they're like, you have to fit in this box. And I didn't fit anywhere near that box. And so when I realized that I had a choice, and, like, everything inside of me just burns to be able to let the world know that they have a choice, and who they are as they are is exactly perfect.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Good. Well, I was going to ask you, like, how did you find this? How did you discover that this was your mission on the planet?
Well, cuddle party was my first taste, and that when I sat in the welcome circle of people really being encouraged to say no, and that no was actually a gift because that's how you can get in touch with your yes. Then, like everyone around me growing up had always pretended, and nobody would say no. They'd say maybe, or they'd try and put everything on their plate, or there was just no that was allowed. And so even that piece started changing my life. And hey, I'm actually allowed to say no to the things I don't like. It's okay to not like things, and it started opening up this whole other world of, as my voice started expressing, I'm like, wow, I actually have something to say, and like I'm passionate about this. And then I found Tantra through the cuddle party world. Then I had someone introduce me to the San Diego community, and it just resonated with the ritual and the ceremony. And like I'm part Cherokee, and so I have this Native American blood in me that's just like, it's been so in love with ritual my whole life. And so then Tantra just opened up all these spaces. And then I know, Kat, you know Kai Carell. Michelle, do you know Kai?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
Yes.
We've had him on before. Yes.
Yeah.
So I met Kai in New York close to 7 years ago. And at that time, he'd done a few goddess pujas or like art of adoration puja. But most of the time he was in his apartment just meditating 8 or 9 hours a day. And he's like, Mike, I have a gift for you. And so I brought him out to San Diego for the first time, and he offered me this goddess puja. And I'm just like sobbing and crying. Like they hold your tears and shower you with rose petals. And it was like the first time in my life that I felt like I was worthy just because. And I apprenticed with him, and we toured around, and I did over 200 goddess pujas. And now Kai's moved on to other work. And now I am so blessed to get to offer that particular puja around the world.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So let's back up a minute, because we're throwing around this word, and I don't know if all of our, this word puja, I don't know if all of our viewers are familiar with what that means. And so Monique, please tell us in your deepest, most heartfelt sense, and hours and hours and hours of practice in receiving and offering and facilitating, what is that? What is a puja?
Well, puja, like the definition is, it's a gift, an offering, or a prayer. And the way that I've experienced it and that I offer it is that you have the invitation to fall in love with every single person that sits in front of you. Because a puja format is, there's an inner and an outer circle. And I don't worry about gender, like it doesn't matter. There's a giver and receiver. So there's someone on each side. And then the invitation is the people rotate around, you get invited to fall in love with every single person that's sitting in front of you. And when you finished and you stand up to walk out the door, you realize that you've fallen madly in love with yourself, and you didn't even realize it, because every single one of those people, and especially if like you love doing pujas and you just take people along on this ride, then they've seen so many different aspects of themselves in each person that sat in front of them, that you realize, oh, all those pieces that I've tried to run away or hide, they're amazing and beautiful, and I really love me.
Beautiful. I feel like I just want to let that sink in for a moment. It's just like, oh, let's all just let that receive and land in our bodies, that we get to fall more madly, deeply in love with ourselves by falling in love with other people. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, and this is also the context in which Kat and I met you about 1.5 years ago, was the puja at Ellie and Dustin's house. And that was my first puja. And
I love it.
Yeah, that was my first one. And Kat, I think that was not your first puja, right?
Right.
Yeah, but it was so wonderful. And I remember that, that feeling that you're describing, Monique, this such richness. And I remember at one point, actually, this one particular exercise, I was partnered with, for that exercise, I was partnered with a woman, and there's this worshiping of the goddess by worshiping and devoting to and kneeling before the feet of this woman, and just seeing in her eyes and her presence the radiation out of spirit and the divine. It was so profoundly humbling. And that devotional aspect is another piece that we're talking about today, especially in conjunction with Valentine's Day and the focus on love and romance, and let us fall more in love and shower each other with love and roses and chocolates, and and what is underneath all of that? What is that running current of deep presence? Yeah.
What I feel that you're speaking to is really the art of receiving. And puja gives you so many opportunities, because you realize halfway through, because most pujas are 2 to 4 hours, And you realize halfway through, especially if you're on the receiver side, that, wow, I've spent my whole life trying to give. I've tried to prove something. I've tried to impress someone. I've tried to show up. And you realize there's nothing to show up for. There's no one you need to impress. All that you get to do is just sit back and relax and receive. And there's nothing you have to offer in return. And it really starts changing those neural pathways inside of us for so many of us, because I know I spent my whole life trying to give and prove that I was enough. And when you realize, no, you don't have to do any of that. The greatest gift you can offer these beautiful givers that are sitting in front of you is just sit back and totally and utterly receive them. And you watch their faces melt, because so many people have longed to be received completely. And so it's just this reciprocal, amazing space of people getting to relax and people getting to be seen and dropping underneath any of those like defenses or the things that we try and hold on to. We're like, no, we just actually get to sit and be with one another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And we work with a lot of our listeners are practitioners and healers and facilitators, and we're doers, we're givers. We're like, okay, let me show up and try to help people and serve and be of service and support and all of these pieces. And so often the thing that catches up the healer most, more than anything, is the inability to truly receive, and to receive both from others, from other people, from spirit, from the world, to abundance, everything. We often are so focused on giving that we have such a hard time with receiving. And it's a practice. It's a practice like anything else. And unfortunately, there's in the world, there's not a lot of places to practice as intensely and as intimately as this container that you're creating for that specific purpose.
Yeah, I agree. And a big part of my journey, even just these past 6 weeks, is I went to Hawaii and I got slammed by a wave. And then I was in the hospital and I had a cane and I had a sling on my arm. And then I got a cold and then I got the flu. I haven't had the flu since I was 11 years old. So I spent like 3.5 weeks in this beautiful mama land, not being able to do anything. Like I was totally not able to give one thing. And there was so much kindness offered to me and just people showing up. And by the time I left, everything had slowed down. And I realized on even a whole nother level what it means to ultimately and just like unconditionally receive, because the people around us are just longing for us to have that gift, because then we're full. And like since I've come back, then the few events that I've done, then I've just felt this overwhelming fullness, but like even beyond fullness, just like this spirit and this joy and this devotion for the people that I'm working with that I hadn't felt in a while because I'd gotten so tired.
Yeah, that's such an important point. And the Hawaii is like that. Like the islands, they will give you what you need, and sometimes the most uncomfortable way possible to really just hammer home the message of you think you're going for one thing, but you're going to get something totally different for sure.
And in your case, literally, unfortunately. So.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but that fullness, I mean, and I know, Kat's calling you the busiest woman in Tantra, or the hardest working woman in Tantra. And that, speaking to that tendency that we have, even though, as practiced as you are in receiving, sometimes we have to be laid out in order to be like, there is no other option for you to just accept to receive. And it's funny, I had a little mini experience of this actually a couple days ago, where I, following the retreat weekend with Kat, where we were facilitating all weekend, I was not only helping her facilitate and helping hold the space, I was also doing all of the exercises.
She was participating. We had an odd number, so she was participating in every single exercise of channeling and doing psychic and healing work, and it was just, she was like full on. I don't know how she did it.
I was drinking a lot of, I had my like lemon juice and salt thing going. So I had a lot of electrolytes, and I was like, and I was cooking food for people, and just like, it was, I was doing all the things. And so by the end of that, I mean, I was kind of wiped out, and I did a pretty good job managing my energy, but the following day, that Monday, I was like, I really want to set an intention for me to receive and to be just in receiving mode and feel nourished and replenished and lit up and fueled. And following that, I got a little bit knocked out, like not super hard, but I just, spirit hit me a little bit. And so I was getting a ride from a couple of brothers to go just run an errand. And, we were in the car for about 45 minutes, and I was processing energy for that time, about 45 minutes. And I'm thinking like, oh my God, like, I'm in the car, like I can't like go put my feet on the ground and ground myself. And then both of them are holding space for me to like move this energy through. And so I got to receive like in a sort of uncomfortable way of like, I'm in the car, we're on the highway, I can't get out of the car. And like, I don't want to open the window because then it makes this like horrible noise. And I'm like, but both of them showed up for me in this time. Like I'd been showing up for them all weekend, and they got to hold space for me, and I was totally fine. But it definitely wasn't the way I would have chosen to be in receiving and feel filled up, but that's ultimately what happened. And again, it's that sort of, how do we let ourselves receive? How do we explore that process of devotion and the relationship to devotion and complete that cycle? Ultimately, the giving and the receiving, it is a cyclical relationship, and most of us choke it off after the giving. It's like, okay, giving, that's it. Like giving, and we don't ever complete that cycle. And so then, when we're kind of forced into the completion of that cycle, it can be a little uncomfortable, and yet ultimately it is a very humbling practice and a humbling awareness in a lot of ways, I think.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm curious, Monique, like let's talk about devotion a little bit, and also I believe that's the title of your DVD, right? Is Puja and the Art of Devotion?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or the art of adoration, but to me, they're both along the same lines.
Yeah. So I mean, I'd love to hear in your words about that, and really like what is this idea to play with adoration and devotion?
Mm-hmm. Well, some key points, because like you said, it is a practice. And so some of the key points that I found to be able to offer people and what work in my own life is being able to slow down, because we get so busy and we have our to-do lists and we have all of these things, but especially in workshop experiences, is that I've really, over the course of the last 3 years, slowed everything down. So instead of doing like 12, 13 exercises in a day or a weekend, then we do 3, and then we go super deep. And then there's this total integration time afterwards, so that when you walk out of the workshop, you're actually taking those pieces with you instead of, oh, I had this really great workshop. Because when you slow down, you're adoring yourself. You're offering that devotion to yourself. So that like the whole piece for me is workshops are just a glimpse or a taste. And then go live your life that way. Like our life can be the grandest workshop that you could ever imagine. But you have to be able to slow down and start be able to rewire all of these different voices that we have, all of these different patterns and habits that we've used to distract ourselves, that we've used to prove our worth, that we've used to give. And so you just start changing things. And so even just as the simple exercise of closing your eyes and having like 3 different fruits in front of you, or whatever foods that you want to try. Fruit can be really yummy and easy. And then you just close your eyes and smell it. Maybe rub it on your cheekbones, on your lips, put it in your mouth, and just slow down that simple act of how deeply can you savor this in all of your senses. And then you start doing that. And if you're with a tree, if you're with the water, if you're with a lover, and you're just slowing everything down. And that's where adoration and devotion start bubbling up, because that's all you have to offer each other when all the other stuff is out of the way.
Mm. Beautiful.
Mm-hmm. It's really beautiful. A lot of times, I mean, that was definitely my, I don't know if I accomplished it or not, but my theme for the weekend was spaciousness, because my tendency is to overdo, overgive, overteach, over everything instead of like, okay, like let there be enough room for things. Okay, everybody needs to have a rest. Go take a rest. And to shift, I think it has a lot to do with shifting our value, our concept of what our value is to the world. That I think we're really taught from the time we're very young, like, okay, get up at 6 a.m. and get to school and do and do and do and do and do and go to dance class and go to sports and go to art and go and then do and then food and then homework and then go to bed. Like, we're so taught that everything is about how much can you accomplish, how much can you do, how much can you give, instead of what does it feel like to be having this experience. And so it's like we're, you know, we talk about this a lot, like we're truly in this space of having to learn how to rehuman.
Yeah. One of the things, Monique, that I hear when you're sharing this, I love the example of sitting with the fruit, or really like having that stillness of the water, or, you know, being on the earth or whatever, because all of these pieces that you're talking about is, you know, that relationship of how are we engaging in a way of radical presence with our environment and with our lives. And ultimately that's that, you know, some of that core of the adoration and the devotional aspect cannot happen without that place of deep presence. And so often, you know, and intimacy, really. So often we translate, or we believe intimacy occurs between two people, or presence occurs like, okay, when I'm in front of another person. And yet these are, everything that you mentioned are practices that we can do with ourselves first, and ideally will do with ourselves before we bring that to another person, so that we can, like you're talking about, rewire ourselves, retrain ourselves, come back into our bodies and be in that state of awareness and presence and sensuality, in terms of experiencing from the senses, being here before anywhere else.
Because if we're so busy doing, then there's no way to be able to enjoy the life that you've created, or this body that we have. Like, we're just on to the next thing so fast. And so when you slow down, then it really allows you the opportunity to start feeling in your body, like you said, like, oh, how does this feel? And, you know, I really like this. And then you can start refining in the moment. So you get to the subtle nuances and this deep sensitivity, which to me is what devotion is all about, is like offering that presence with sensitivity of, oh, how do I feel? How do you feel? How can we dance with spirit within like this co-creation? And that can only happen when we're able to get to know ourselves so intimately that then we can say, oh yeah, you know, let me move my body, let me move my hip here, let me offer this right now, let me take a 15-minute nap, and then I can be so present with you. And that only comes when you're able to so slow down and figure out those minor nuances that we usually skip past to get on to the next thing.
Absolutely. So I'm wondering, oh, Kat, you were going to say something.
That's okay, go ahead.
Okay, well, I wanted to explore why, right? Like all of these practices, you know, this, and especially we're talking about this today, and I mean, everybody's got their own opinion about Valentine's Day, right? Like, some people love Valentine's Day, some people hate Valentine's Day, some people don't care about Valentine's Day, or somewhere in between those things. And, you know, so speaking today about, you know, love that we have for ourselves, love that we're sharing, and universal compassion, but all of these practices, puja and devotion and tantra and adoration and all of this, I mean, it's not limited to Valentine's Day by any means, nor should it ever be. But why are we wanting to explore this? Why is puja such a juicy opportunity? Why should we be seeking out goddess pujas? Why should we be immersing ourselves in devotion? What's the why?
Well, any type of ritual or devotion that can take us out of that everyday busyness. And so, like, if you come home from work, or you come home from this long day of doing other things, one of the greatest transitions is to be able to have flowers there, even a rose petal. You can have chocolate, you can have your candles, you can, like, I know a lot of couples, then they don't want to, they'll never process in the bedroom. Like, they want the bedroom just to be a place of this deep intimacy. And so they'll go talk in the living room, or like they have the other places for other things. And so it's really being able to train your mind, okay, I can let go of things. And you can do that with sights and smells, or taking away your sight, like really giving you the opportunity to drop in from here's how I've been all day, or here's how I've been all week, or like, it's really, again, that retraining. And so you can create that ritual in anything that you do just by slowing down. But then the more that you can really tune into, what do I want? do I want daffodils? You know, do I want orchids? Do I love the smell of jasmine? Like, what are the things that you really love? And then you start anchoring it in. So then the next time that there's rose petals when you walk into the door, then your brain, all of a sudden, those neural pathways open. And then the next time it's even faster and faster. And so, yes, it's the practice of slowing down so that then your body doesn't even have to think about it. Because as you know, like mastery is being able to practice something so many times that then it's just automatic. It's just there. And so then you don't have to think about it, and you don't have your mind getting in the way. And so definitely you don't just want to do it on Valentine's, but how many of you that are listening and watching this, do you want to get a diamond ring, or do you want to get a box of chocolates, or would you love to have a lover in front of you saying, you have the next 2 hours of my total and utter presence, and I'd love to hold your tears and your emotions for any time they've never been held, and can I just trace this rose all over your body? Like, who wouldn't want that as a Valentine's or an anytime present from a loving person in their life? And it doesn't even have to be a lover. Like, I've done this type of ceremony with moms and sons, and fathers and daughters, moms and daughters, like grandmas. We had a grandma that got to be just surrounded by all of her children and grandchildren, and offered this puja. And it's just so amazing just to get to witness the love that transpires.
So beautiful. It truly is really inspiring. And, you know, like, as you're talking about, you know, well, what do you really want? You know, do you just need another thing? You need another, you need a piece of jewelry? Do you need another, you know, this thing that's this representation of what love is supposed to be, instead of the actual presence of love?
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of us are kind of stuck in that, seeking so much for love, and trying to find it in the material, and in, you know, sort of these concepts and representations, instead of the actual presence of what it means to share love with another human being and with ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm really curious, like, because we're talking on this very personal level of why, but especially as you're seeing, because you see large groups of people doing this work, and communities where you've come, and then years later you're coming back again, and seeing people over periods of time and in community, like, what is this larger implication for us as a society, as our communities, as, you know, a global population, to be engaging in this kind of devotion?
Well, I'll share 2 specific examples of different communities I've gone to. So last December, actually November, I was approached by someone saying they came to one of my events and said, Monique, you'd be perfect in China. And I'd never even thought about China. But it was just such a yes in my body that within like 5 weeks, I was over there, and I was teaching to this underground group of women Tantra. And like, we started out, and I'm like, how many of you have ever looked at your own yoni? Your own vulva, pussy, whatever word you want to call it. And we had 2 people in the room raise their hand. And by the end, then these women were having all of these experiences of getting undressed and showing their yoni to each other and to themselves, and like just opened up this whole experience of these women that have been repressed their whole life. But one of the first steps that we did was this goddess puja of them being offered to each other. And halfway through, especially when they were holding each other's tears, there was all this pain, because in China, so many of the women were never wanted. Like, their families just wanted sons. And so it was like this collective, just sobbing, wailing, letting go of all of this grief that made space for so much more room throughout the week for them to be able to open up to that they were worthy. And then they're like dancing and celebrating. And there was so all this grief had been able to be felt, so that then there was room for them to feel something else. And so China just like touched my heart so much. I don't even have words to express it, but to be able to see these women that had never imagined ritual or like what it could look like, to be able to have this experience with each other in so many different fashions, and to just watch them blossom and open up, it is something that I'll take to my deathbed of just how amazing life can possibly be. And then the other example is here in DC. Like, this is my almost 9th year that I've been coming back here. And I came out here once to do a different type of puja. And then I brought Kai out, and we had the gentleman that I'm staying at his house now that we do all of these different events at. Like, that was only his second event ever. And he's like, wow, Monique, I have this big house. And he was basically a hermit and had no idea how to talk or socialize with anyone, had no idea to ask for what he wanted. And just to watch this amazing being, like, he was at our class last night and was just so open and expressive, and just getting to watch the community come together. Now there's like 50 events at his house at least every year. And it's just brought the community this spaciousness to be able to start figuring out, what do we want? How can we practice it? How can we show up for each other? And so it's been a huge gift and blessing to get to watch that in the different communities that I get to travel to, but especially here in DC.
Amazing. Oh, that's so beautiful. I'm hearing a few different threads in what you're saying, Monique. I want to pull some of these out. So individually and collectively, there's, as we get to be embodied and know ourselves and know our desires, so we get to ask for what we want, we get to release conditioning, we get to release ideas about who we should be, or what we should want, or what we should say yes to or ask for, or no to or ask for. And I mean, culturally, we speak a lot on this podcast. We talk a lot about the healer archetype. We talk a lot about the different archetypes of light workers or spiritual warriors or practitioners in the field. And there's a whole lot of collective grief and collective shame and collective heaviness and collective like poverty contracts, you know, like the impoverished healer, the wounded healer, the hermit living off in the woods, the witch living by herself. You know, there's a lot of these very wounded archetypes associated with people who work in this field. Mm-hmm. And I think what you were speaking to, particularly with your experience of these women in China, around what collectively agreed upon suffering have they been embodying and holding for so long, about they weren't wanted, they were repressed, they were pushed down, they weren't allowed to explore themselves and know their power and their capacity for intimacy. And I think that's one of the, looking to a lot of the people who tune into this show, we are recovering from those wounds ourselves, you know, about like, you're not allowed to be powerful, you're not allowed to be magical, it's not safe to be seen, it's not safe to live in the village, and all these pieces about not only do we get to know ourselves more deeply, we get to create community and create connection, because there is that increased capacity for intimacy and that increased capacity for presence and awareness and appreciation in a really profound way.
Mm-hmm. That's very well put, Michelle. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm so excited. Like, I love talking about this. And I mean, again, I remember I was on fire after the puja where we met, Monique. I was all about the puja. I bought your DVD and I was like coming back to Portland, you know, I live in Portland, and I came back to Portland. I was telling everybody about it. I'm like, let's have a puja. Like, let's do it. Like, let's, you know, get ourselves in this practice of devotion, and really exploring the idea of devotion. Also, one other piece I want to touch on about devotion is, and Kat and I have talked about this, like devotion versus discipline, and how in terms of how do we treat a practice, how do we honor, like, okay, discipline is like, you know, okay, I commit to doing these things, I'm regimented, maybe it's a routine, as opposed to devotion of, I get to do this for myself, I get to show up, I'm choosing very proactively to treat myself in this very loving way. So.
I love that. And I completely and utterly agree. It is, because you can choose to go to the gym because you hate your body, or you can choose to go because you love it. And it's a completely different practice.
Yeah, that's a really good example. Yeah. Kat, how was that puja experience for you where we met Monique? You remember that?
It was interesting. I had a blindfold on because I had burnt my eyes a few days beforehand, really significantly. I still have, this was a long time ago, so I still have, it's almost 2 years ago, so I still have residual effects from that, actually. But so that was fairly challenging for me to not be seeing and to be in like an extra layer of kind of vulnerability in the experience. which I never ever would have chosen to do for myself. Like that's not something I would have done as a free will. But Michelle was there, and I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna stay, and so that's how I engaged with the work, and it was really beautiful to get to feel people's energy and in that way, and to feel so cared for throughout that experience in like a heightened vulnerable space for me.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was definitely different than I would have expected, for sure.
Well, thank you for that trust and for showing up.
Yeah. And, I think that's one of the pieces, is that it, all of this, it triggers a certain amount of vulnerability within us, within ourselves, just with ourselves, and then with others, to be actually seen. And for so many of us, I know I can include myself in that, there has for such a long time been this need or perceived need for protection and masking and putting on a show of strength or power or detachment, or not letting people close. And we can spend our whole lives in that, and sometimes don't even realize that that's what we're doing. And yet when we're forced, in a way, like, because you're there, like you're gonna do the exercises, to sit across from someone and to be extremely present with someone and their emotions and their they're just where they're at, and also with your own self and your own emotions and where you're at, and being in that energetic emotional connection with so many different people, it starts to just kind of chip away, I think, at that facade that we're all so invested in holding on to, and giving us the opportunity to know ourselves in a deeper way. Because we can know ourselves like, I'm here, I'm home, I'm kind of sitting and doing my meditation, or I'm doing my work or whatever, and I can know myself in a certain way there, and I can be with my partner and love and connection and intimacy with one person, and I can know myself there, and that expands me. And then there's this other piece that expands. I can just like feel this kind of like little spot in my heart where it's like when we're actually letting ourselves be seen and witnessed by people maybe that we've never met before, total strangers. There is this other layer of knowing ourselves that we get to access.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So Monique, I'm wondering what tips do you have for people about implementing? I mean, aside from attending one of your amazing workshops or facilitated events, which I would highly encourage anybody to do, or looking into the DVD, but what tips do you have for people about implementing some of these practices? This increasing our awareness of our relationship to our environment, increasing our awareness of devotion. And I know you've mentioned some already, but what are your top three?
Well, go do a meditation and give yourself some time, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and just start writing down the things that you know that you are a hell yes to, that you're really excited to in life, that you love, that like bring you pleasure, that bring you peace in your body. Like just sit and write down a whole list of different things. And especially if you're in a partnership, then you and your partner can do that separately, and then get together and be able to hand this list to your partner. And then you can have different nights of giving or receiving, and totally just be spoiled because you've just handed your partner this key to how you love to be loved and how you can slow down, so that they can just pick 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, depending how much time you have, to really spoil you. And if you're not in a partnership, you can do this for yourself. And so the beauty is that you're taking that time and presence and putting effort in to really recognize, what do I like right now? Because we're constantly changing in every breath. And so it's giving yourself an opportunity. What is my body? What is my soul craving right now? And then do that meditation, and then have a date night with yourself and go out and get the things that you've been longing for. That if you've been waiting for someone to buy you flowers, go and pick flowers off the side of the road. Like go to the florist and pick the most amazing bunch and take it home for yourself. And every time you look at it, you're going to realize how much you love yourself. And you can even write a card exactly the way what you wish someone could have said to you. And every time you read it, then your whole body's going to soften and open more, because we're so used to that negative self-talk and that criticism and different things outside. So every time that you can bring in something that's positive and inspiring to you, then your body starts softening and opening, and it's like, oh, Michelle's showing up. Yay, and so then your inner soul and your inner little child is going to keep watching for more of that and softening more and more, and just being able that you just get to have the most glorious relationship with yourself, because all of that trust is being built. And then when you're sharing it with a partner or partners or your children or people in your world, then you just have all of these ways. Like it goes right in alignment. If you've ever read the 5 languages, the 5 love languages, like this is a beautiful way to be able to bring in acts of service and gifts and quality time and words of affirmation and like all the touch and these beautiful ways of showing each other and ourselves how we love.
Mm. I love that. Yeah, you gave me a couple ideas right there of things that I'm going to go off and do now, but I love it. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. What advice would you offer to somebody who is, so it is Valentine's Day. What if we are looking to create, to create an experience of this with our partners? So we, maybe we make our lists and we offer to each other. We can create this really beautiful meditative experience. What are some of the ways that you can suggest to people to be able to allow ourselves to open? And I guess, and a second part to that question, when you're facilitating these events for people, what do people often have trouble with, and how do you support them through that?
It's often that, like we talked about earlier, is their ability to receive. And so they start feeling like that they're a burden, or they're not worth it, or things come up around them. It's so easy for them to be able to give, but then when it's their turn to receive, then there's all of their own stuff that comes up. And so like one of the agreements that we have in our agreement field is that nobody's going to support each other unless someone asks for it. Like nobody needs to be shifted, changed, fixed. Like we're all just on our own journey. And so even the partners are not going to go grab Kleenex for their partner. Like you're just going to be able to sit and be with them. And so we really start practicing that presence, that we're just looking at each other as complete whole beings, exactly the way we are. And so you really get to start creating that experience, especially in a container. But what I've offered a lot of my clients, and if it's Valentine's Day, if it's someone's birthday, if it's something that you're wanting to create, this special thing for each other, then sit down, and if you're willing, then get naked. And get naked vulnerably, take off all of your clothes, and just sit with each other and create this container. And it could be 15 minutes, it could be 30 minutes, and just allow each other to say anything that's in the way of you receiving your partner's love. And that you're not going to get mad at each other, you're not going to hold it against each other. And so you just say, Michelle, what's in the way of me receiving your love is that I really haven't known you for very long. And I see this smiling face and I feel so much light from you, but I really long for this depth of connection. And like just really being vulnerable and offering in the moment. And then you'll go back and forth. So each partner with it, what's in the way of me receiving your love is this. And then you go from that to if there's anything that needs to be cleared. Like if there's anything that you're longing to ask for forgiveness for, if there's anything that you feel like you've been holding over your partner's head and you're willing to share, hey, this is, I know this happened 3 years ago, but it still keeps coming up for me. And so can you listen to what I'm feeling right now? Again, with just from your own point of view, like come from this is how I'm feeling. Would you be willing just to support me in my feelings instead of you did this to me? How did this happen? It's all about you taking responsibility and allowing your partner to receive you. And then the final phase is asking for what you really want. And your other partner can say, okay, that's great. Is there anything else? Is there anything else? Is there anything that will make it even better? Because we're so used to asking for what we think the other person will be a yes to or what we think is okay. And so I've watched I've watched myself blossom when there's actually a space for me to go beyond and ask for the things that I think there's no way anybody in the world would be a yes to, or that anyone could ever like that about me. And they're like, this is great. I can't wait to give that to you, Monique. And it just softens those places inside of me that feel like I'm not enough or too much. And I've seen that with so many of my couples, clients that come in.
Wow. Amazing. I love it. I love all those beautiful recommendations. I think you're speaking to, especially like the too much, not enoughness, speaking to a really important part of what a lot of us experience, like, oh, I'm too whatever, not enough, whatever. And letting those desires be not only heard and witnessed, but encouraged.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my gosh, I'm really, really hoping that everybody who watches and listens and tunes into this goes back and does so repeatedly. I mean, I'm already thinking like, oh man, I got to go watch this after we post it up. And right? Like get some tips on like,
write that stuff down.
Right, exactly. Right. And take notes. I got to take notes on this and really let it integrate. So Monique, kind of what you talked about of like, here we are, to those of you tuning in, here we are having some really beautiful recommendations from an expert in the field. How are we going to go integrate this? How are we going to go let it sink into our bodies and then put it into practice? Not only today on Valentine's Day, but all the time, every day with ourselves, with those we love, with everybody that we come into contact with.
Mm-hmm. And the last piece I just forgot to say is it's really important that you allow your partner to ask for anything, and you don't have to fulfill it. You don't have to provide it. Like, it's more that you're just offering that space so that they can really ask you for anything, but you're not saying, yeah, I'm going to give that to you. You're just giving them the opportunity to imagine and ask for exactly what they want.
Yeah. Amazing.
Beautiful, Monique. Thank you. Anything else, Michelle? Do you want a question? I want to give Monique some time to share with us where she's going to be and how to get in touch with her and all of those other pieces.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm trying to think of like, wow, we've got, an expert on the show. Like, what else do we want to know? What else do we want to ask?
Well, you can have me back.
Yeah.
I'll happily come back, ladies.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. I mean, I feel like there's so much richness in what you're offering. There's so much, and I know like we kind of like did a little scratch the surface thing here today. Mm-hmm. And obviously there's so much more, and really like that, the practice part of it, I think is something that I'm really getting out of what you're saying. And that's part of what I also discovered after attending your puja. And again, I bought your DVD. I I gifted my boyfriend at the time a puja, and I've, it was great. It was like the best, best, and this was Christmas last year. He said it's the best Christmas present he ever got. And so he was all about it. And I'm actually doing another one today for my beloved, which will be super fun. But
good for you, honey.
Thank you. I'm really excited. And so you're reminding me like, oh yeah, I need to go buy roses, or like I need to like, right. But it's also like, how can I, one of the things that I'm kind of taking away from this is like, how can I give myself those moments in, and I'm getting better at it. I've made a practice of really like having fresh flowers in my house all the time. And like, how can I integrate it even more? How can I be vulnerable with myself even more? And Kat, like what you're talking about, it's so funny that you said that, because that's what my journaling practice was this morning. I had to share with both of you, because basically exactly what Kat said about using the work almost as a barrier to intimacy. Mm-hmm. And I was feeling that really strongly this morning. I was feeling like, wow, here I am doing this, very specific work. I have a very specific frequency. I like talking about esoteric stuff. I kind of like being a little bit intimidating in certain ways. Honest here. But am I using that as a barrier to being truly vulnerable with myself and with people who I'm really, really close to, especially in this relationship that I'm currently in? And I was journaling about that this morning, and what I found, I was writing I am affirmations, I am declarations, and the biggest thing was like, I am safe to be seen. I am safe to be understood. And I think that's part of a really huge component, Monique, in what you're talking about, the process of adoration is like, can we actually let ourselves be seen, like be truly seen, be acknowledged, be heard? And that was my big one this morning. I am safe to be seen. I am safe to be understood. I am safe to be witnessed.
Oh, that's beautiful, honey.
Thank you. Yeah. We're doing
it. When you were talking about Portland, like I didn't know you were in Portland. So I want to check your schedule because I know you'll be coming to see Matt Kahn the end of April. He's having a soul convergence there. And so I have evenings free. So I'd love to co-create a puja or like I can definitely bring a puja, but we can co-create whatever you and I would like to. I'll be there for 6 days.
Fantastic. I'm a fuck yes to that. Let's do it.
Yay.
Okay, so well, there you go. Put that on your calendar, people. So end of April, Monique.
Yeah, it's the 25th through the 29th. I'll be there.
Perfect. Oh, that sounds amazing. Yeah, let's cook up some magic for sure.
Yay. And then as far as anyone that's watching or listening, like it's so easy to find me. Everyone's saying, Monique, where in the world are you? So guess what? That is my URL. Where in the world is MoniqueDarling.com. And I'm all over the world. I'm taking more time off for myself this year. So you might have to come closer to me. I used to travel to like 23 different places and now I've cut back to 11. So you might have to come to me a little bit more, but I'm out there. I'd love to play with any of you. And I respect and love both of these women so much. Go back and watch their other shaman sisters. Like the greatest gift of adoration or devotion we can offer each other is by shining that light of who we are so brightly. It negates any concept of competition or comparison because it just doesn't exist. Like each of us are so unique that all there is a synergy that we can co-create with each other and the world just gets brighter and we all have permission to be more us. So thank you too for doing that.
Thank you so much, Monique. So where in the world is MoniqueDarling.com. You can also, you have a Facebook page, right? People can follow you on Facebook. People can track your goings on. You have your DVD, you've got your book, Beyond Cuddle Party. You've got all sorts of ways for people to follow you and interact with your content and make sure they stay in touch and see where you are and what events you have going on.
And my biggest event this year, I'm having it in Hawaii. Like I do a facilitator training once a year. It's always November 1st through the 8th. So if you've been listening and you're like, wow, I really want to be able to offer this to other people, then that's happening on the Big Island in November. So check it out and come play.
Can people register through your website, find more information on your website?
They can, yeah. All the information's there.
Cool. Fantastic. Thank you so much. And to those of you tuning in, as Monique was very, very kindly urging you to do, you can find all our past episodes on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher under our name, Shaman Sister Sessions. Go ahead and give us a thumbs up, give us a 5-star rating, help our work become more visible, more available to people who are asking these questions and seeking community in the field. So we love your reviews. We love your likes. Please. You can also find us on Facebook. Follow us there, again, under that same name. You can send us an email, shamansistersessions@gmail.com, if you have anything that you'd like to hear us talk about on the show, if you have any questions for us, if you didn't catch an episode and you want to kind of know where to catch up, or you just have any thoughts or love notes for us, you can send that your way. We will happily receive that. And again, you can reach out to Monique. I'm sure she'd love to hear from you with questions and invitations or attending various workshops that she's got going on.
Thanks, Michelle. Thank you, Kat.
Thank you.
Happy
Monique.
Valentine's.
Happy Valentine's.
Woo.